You probably wouldn't think a small town roofer in Texas could teach us much about the future of business or about our changing climate. But as it turns out, you'd be wrong. Today, we're going to pick apart a single local business website to uncover a much, much bigger story. A story about how our world is quietly adapting to some massive new pressures.
So let's say we land on this website for a company called Summit Roofing. It's in a suburb of San Antonio called Live Oak. At first glance, it looks, well, like a roofer's website. But what can it really tell us about anything besides shingles and gutters?
A whole lot, actually. Because baked right into their services and their sales pitch is a complete blueprint for survival. This is a story about crazy weather, about complicated battles with insurance companies, and about the new reality of protecting the single biggest investment most of us will ever make, our homes. To really get what this business is doing, you first have to understand the battlefield they're on. See, this isn't just any old town. It's a place where a roof is under constant, relentless assault. Let's take a look at the threats. First up, there's this thing called thermal shock. In this part of Texas, it's not unusual for the temperature to swing 40 degrees from day to night. All that expanding and contracting, it just cracks and wears out roofing materials way faster than it should. Then, you get the really sudden, violent stuff. Live Oak is right in the middle of a hail corridor. We're talking golf ball-sized hail as a regular thing. That doesn't just dent a roof, it literally fractures the shingles and wrecks the whole protective layer. And finally, as if that's not enough, there's the wind. And I'm not talking about hurricanes. We're talking about regular summer thunderstorms that can blast out straight-line winds fast enough to just rip shingles right off a roof. It's a constant, invisible enemy. So when you put it all together, you get what the source calls brutal conditions. You've got the scorching heat, the giant hail, the high winds. And on top of all that, you have shifting clay soil that literally stresses the frame of the house and nonstop humidity that's always trying to rot the wood. This is the environment a modern roofer has to defeat. So how do they do it? This is where it gets fascinating. Their entire business model, it's a direct answer to those battlefield conditions we just talked about. Let's break down their playbook. Now, look, these aren't just a list of services. You have to see them as strategic pillars of adaptation. A 24/7 response team. Because, storms don't exactly stick to a 9-to-5 schedule. Deep expertise in insurance claims, because that's often the hardest part for a homeowner. Certifications to prove their work will actually last. And hyperlocal crews, because when water is pouring into your living room, you can't wait for someone to drive in from 2 towns over. And this quote from their site just says it all. In an industry that is filled with storm chasers and high-pressure sales jobs, they position themselves as trusted advisors. They get it. In a high-stakes situation like a damaged roof, trust is everything. And this is how they prove you can trust them. A manufacturer certification isn't just a piece of paper. It means the people who make the shingles have personally trained and approved the installer. And that's what unlocks these insane warranties, some that can last up to 50 years. I mean, in a place where a cheap roof might die in less than 10, that's a massive deal. Okay, so we've seen the big picture strategy. But what does it actually look like in practice when it's time to get a new roof? Well, the process itself is just as strategic. They've got it down to a clear 3-phase process. It all starts with a super detailed assessment, using tech to find problems you'd never see with the naked eye. Then comes the actual installation, which we'll get to in a sec. And it all wraps up with a final walkthrough and activating that warranty, so the homeowner knows they're covered for decades. Right. This is definitely not your grandfather's roofing company. They're using drones to safely check out steep or dangerous spots. They're using infrared cameras to actually see hidden moisture inside the walls. They're super careful about protecting your yard and landscaping, and they use these giant magnets to sweep up every last nail. It's total pro-level project management. But it's not just about the process and the cool tools. It's about the standards. Behind every roof that actually lasts, there are all these codes and regulations. And this company makes a huge point of not just meeting them, but going way beyond them. Okay, remember this number, 115 miles per hour. That's the same as a Category 3 hurricane. And that is the basic wind speed that every single roof in this part of Texas has to be built to withstand, by law. That's the absolute minimum line of defense. And this right here is the critical difference between a roof that's just
good enough and one that's truly built to last. The basic code might just require a standard felt paper underlayment, but these guys use a special heavy-duty ice and water shield. The code has a basic nailing pattern, but they use 6 nails per shingle for extra wind resistance. This is the hidden stuff, the anatomy of real resilience.
So let's bring it all home. What does this all mean for any of us, whether you live in Live Oak, Texas, or anywhere else? Well, the website's FAQ section actually gives us a really clear summary of what we should all be looking for. Check out this number. Between 40 and 60% of the total cost of a new roof is pure labor. That's a huge slice of the pie, right? And it highlights something so important. You're not just buying materials, you're buying craftsmanship. The skill of the installer is what determines if your roof lasts 10 years or 50. And that brings us right to these red flags. You've got to watch out for contractors who don't have a real physical address. Those are the infamous storm chasers who roll into town after a storm and then just disappear. Be super wary of anyone trying to pressure you into a quick decision or anyone with a bid that seems way too good to be true. And yeah, never ever pay the full amount before the work is done. These are universal signs of trouble. Which brings us to a final thought. We obsess over the blueprints of our homes, right? But maybe we should spend just as much time looking at the blueprints of the businesses we hire to protect them. Because as we've seen today, their strategy, their tools, and their standards, they tell a powerful story about the world they're built for and the world we're all living in.